Hello, everyone. I think we may slowly start. My name is Marcin Lewenstein. I'm with InnoEnergy, and it will be my pleasure and privilege to moderate the panel on circular disruption. And in that panel, we use the title that is very catchy. Circularity is catchy already, but disruption is a big word. And then, obviously, wealth is even bigger. So we will have a couple of questions to ask to a marvelous panel today around the topics of disruption and wealth creation in circularity. And to help us go through the circularity jungle, I will have a great panel composed of 5 individuals over here, and I will lead you now to stage, inviting you to join me on those seats. So let me start with Yun Luo, CEO of ROSI. Give a round of applause, please. And then, in the order of appearance, Ulf Arnesson, Stena Recycling Group, Director for Strategy and Sales. Marcin Koziorowski, CEO of Ecobin. Andras Leitner, OMV, Senior Vice President for Innovation and Technology. And Bengt Steinbrecher, startup partner at Holcim. Okay, so again, a couple of big words used to attract our audience, and I would like to help you very warmly for being with us today at this rather late hour. But then let's try to dig into this and understand if the reality is so positive, are we seeing actually the circular disruption, and are we able to turn waste into wealth, and to what extent is actually having impact on the European economy and how it can help to build resilience and to, counter the tide of backlash vis-a-vis climate policies and protecting the environment. Maybe I'll start with Andreas and OMV, because you are very active in different elements of the landscape, touching circularity in many, many different ways. Where do you see the biggest pull for circular solutions? Where the demand comes from? Is it driven by compliance? Is it driven by customer readiness to embrace circular solution? Is it driven by your counterparts or opportunities created by technology? And also, what are the risk factors associated with going into circular projects? And what do you do, and what do you believe the policymakers should do to mitigate those risks?
All right, quite a complex question. So maybe let me start. Why is OMV is a more or less classical energy company historically, which is transforming now into a chemicals company, of course, as well, actually in circular economy. In the broader OMV group, where also Borealis belongs to.
A little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's better. Where also Borealis belongs to, so we do basically mechanical and chemical recycling of plastics, right? Why is circular economy and recycling of plastics important? For those of you who go to the nice beaches here in the south, know that littering is a massive issue which we need to take care of. And of course, this is certainly a driver and motivation beyond all legislation to tackle this significant challenge. So what we did is we developed a process originally to make out of plastic waste oil to replace actually crude oil. This was 15 years ago. In the meanwhile, it turned out this fits very well to the circularity concept. Again, an innovation which started with something which was eventually meant completely differently at the beginning. But of course, now we are really into this. And yeah, we scaled up the process. We have 16,000 ton plants up and running in Vienna, which is great, right? And you ask about customers. So when you ask 4 or 5 years ago, customers said, we absolutely need this, yeah? And here comes a little bit also what in innovation and circularity, the role plays also over time is, how is the economy going, yeah? For those of you who are in the plastics industry know, it's a very long market in Europe, prices are very low, customers prefer again virgin materials and not necessarily circularity, right? So the willingness to pay is certainly lower than it was in the past, where every brand owner basically wrote on his homepage, we give circularity content off in percentage in our products. On legislation, this is honestly, I hope I'm not too unfair and brutal, this is the make or break for chemical recycling at the moment. The plastic waste regulation, which will be finally defined next year, will at the end, first of all, decide how much circularity amount will be in the new plastic products, number one. But on top, which mass balancing regime, for those of you who are a little bit into this, will take place. In simple words, this will decide if a chemical recycling process has a yield around 90% or around 50%. This also means when you want to make money with chemical recycling and circular economy, which we need to because we are a company, right? We are not a university, we are a company which needs to make money. This has a huge impact. And I think when you make 50% yield out of such a process, it's quite clear it's very difficult to be economically feasible.
So what do you think will happen? How things may unfold? Do you think the regulation will turn favorable or not? And what will happen with circularity in plastics if the regulators fail to embrace this?
So if regulators fail, I can tell you what will happen, and you can see it already. There are, I think, in the meanwhile, 3 big chemical recycling projects in Europe on hold or stopped. Even those who got really double-digit million euro funding from the European Investment Fund, exactly for this reason. One big player said, I do not invest literally in Europe in chemical recycling as long as this is not clarified. Yeah? So we as industry say, look, we need security to invest, otherwise it will not happen.
Yeah. I will try to move to Ulf now with a question on exactly that, so on the junction between policy and circularity, and to what extent the bottlenecks on the market and the challenges that you are aware of in the rollout of circular projects can be augmented or alleviated by appropriate regulation. So how regulation influences circular projects, and what are the biggest bottlenecks that you would like regulation to tackle in terms of the rollout of circular projects in Europe? Or maybe, perhaps, it's not for regulation to be driving this, and it's the market that should decide.
Well, I agree totally with the end of your question, actually. But just to give a context of that, Stena Recycling, we are shareholders here in InnoEnergy, and we are an investor. But above all, we are a market maker of recycled raw materials, and that is the role we are focusing a lot in this field and in this context. And as Diego said this morning, it's a lot of focus now on the supply side of the value chain and how to create, say, qualitative raw materials out of the products we have in the system. And everything we are handling is classed as waste, and waste is then highly regulated in a lot of legal frames. And the challenge we are facing today is that we see a tsunami of legislation in the European Union. And as you know, the process of a new legislation in Europe, it's a lot of discussion and negotiations, and then in the end there is a compromise. And the dilemma is when you are facing 20 different rule sets and all are a compromise, then for sure they are not striving in the same direction. So we have a lot of constraints in the supply chain today that actually prevents us from invest. One example is the waste shipment regulation, where a lot of the complex waste that we want to process needs a notification for cross-border transport. And according to the law, it should take not more than 30 days. Today it takes something between 6 and 10 months, and it's value for 1 year. So as soon as you get this, you need to apply for the next one. And that makes it impossible to, say, trust that we can scale, that we can have the amount of material, the critical mass to invest, especially in the Nordics, where we have quite small volumes and we need to transport it to one bigger facility. And we also have the same when we are cooperating with Borealis regarding the chemical recycling, that there is a lot of regulation that actually is killing the interest of investing for the time being.
I hear you, but at the same time, there are so many projects in Europe that are finding comfort and finding a certain market pull through regulation, imposing something on different market participants, hence allowing a more streamlined approach and the long-term planning in terms of, the quotas or the mandates or whatever that need to be fulfilled by some market participants. If you look at what was supposed to happen in sustainable aviation fuels, for instance, the mandates were supposed to incentivize the market. And to what extent this type of approach would, in your view, be reasonable to foster circularity? Is it needed? Yes or no, and why?
I think for sure it's needed. I think one of our challenges is that if you're looking on a broader perspective, I mean, if you're working with the OEM industry and the entire value chain of the OEM, there is a lot of legislation when it comes to the waste perspective that affects that value chain, and they're all quite different. And for us then facing that customer and trying to find solutions, it's quite difficult. But then looking at them one by itself, that can sound quite, good out of a regulative perspective. But in the total then, it gets quite constrained, as I said before. So I think the Circular Economy Act coming now, it's really interesting. But for sure, then it needs to be out of a holistic perspective to look at this. Okay, what can stimulate circularity in Europe? And then ask 5 times why on each legislation that we have in this field, because I think we need to reduce quite a lot actually to find a circular system that functions when it comes to making industry out of this and not only projects.
Bengt, can I have your perspective now? Coming from the totally different market, so construction materials, and also if you could elaborate a little bit on that particular market niche and how it is finding opportunities for circular projects to be deployed and circular technologies to be leveraged. Maybe not focusing on technologies for now, because I wanted to leave it for the second round of questions, but rather focusing on the type of opportunity that you have there and the type of investors and stakeholders who need to be involved to make this happen and to actually enable circularity in construction.
Yeah, thank you, Marcin, to give the opportunity here to talk about kind of construction and circularity in construction. And I think if we think about circularity in construction, we think about building a house and then maybe disassembling a house, right? I mean, like with Lego bricks, like we have done it when we were kids. I mean, that's amazing. You have the bricks again and you can build something again. Unfortunately, that's not how we have built in the past, and that's not how we are building currently. I mean, this is maybe a future vision to see how much more can we do with reusable elements. But if we are thinking now about kind of taking a house down, we talk about demolishment. And the waste stream coming from this industry, so construction demolishment waste, makes up to 40% of our total waste streams. So I love it, Marcin, if you call it our niche. If we talk volumes, it's kind of a massive niche making up 40% of global waste volumes. Now, what is that waste? About half of this 40% again is kind of demolished concrete, it's bricks, it's rubble. So sometimes it's kind of a mixed thing of earthy, stony stuff. The good thing about it is, in theory, these materials can be reused, repurposed for exactly the same use again. And concrete you can break up into aggregates and fine materials, which are like a cement, so that you can do fresh concrete. Now, if I look at this opportunity from a venture capital perspective, you have to ask yourself, well, how scalable is such a potential startup solution? How scalable is the technology? Is it defendable? And we are talking about wealth. I mean, how do the business models look in that space? Can we make money out of it? Now, from a more strategic perspective, as I say, construction material producer, construction material supplier, we have a strong ambition to push that market. We have set ourselves the goal to use up to 20 million tons of construction demolition materials and repurpose that in our new materials by 2030. We are currently at about 10 million tons, so doubling in the next 5 years. But for us, probably the key challenges that we have to solve is, first of all, the sourcing. Because like probably most of the waste streams, it's very decentralized. I mean, you're demolishing today here a house, tomorrow it will be in another place. Kind of the variability in the materials, so kind of processing, sorting are key topics. And then in the end, what is the product that we are generating out of it? So I think overall, a very massive niche market with some opportunities. You just have to crack this code of making a wealthy business.
Yeah. The reason I refer to this as niche is because perhaps most of us associate circularity and recycling with the type of waste we are most often exposed to. And obviously, demolition of a house doesn't happen so often in our lives. At least this is my experience. That's why it's not the first image that you conjure when you think about circular materials. But indeed, in terms of volumes and in terms of the scale of the opportunity, this is massive. But then, in terms of wealth that you can create out of this type of waste, is this a real money-making opportunity, or it comes more through conscious and the need to apply circular materials, but there is extremely difficult to squeeze value out of those materials. And if there is value, where it resides. So what are the characteristics of the feedstock or the product that you get out of those solutions that can get you to margin levels allowing deployment of projects?
Yeah, I think that there are two levers on one side, kind of the avoidance of virgin material that you're using for construction, and kind of the CO2 footprint coming with virgin materials and the price coming with the CO2, right? So I mean, if you can replace fresh cement, which you still have to produce with kind of something recycled out of it, this is can massively help to reduce cost and footprint. The second lever is then probably more on the handling and what do you do with the waste, because I mean tipping fees are very big and it's sizable volumes. So if you can reroute the material and really use it again, I mean that's a big cost saving for otherwise people who have to get rid of the waste.
Okay, understand. I will now turn to our two portfolio startups, both from the portfolio that is very close to my heart and long-standing favorites of those of you who had been here to TBB for a couple of times at least. I'll start with you and ROSI. Maybe first asking you to introduce your technology and the company before we go further.
Yeah, so ROSI is a French company. We are committed to extract high purity raw materials from old solar panels. So today we have the best quality materials demonstrated in our industrial plant. So our first factory that is up and running, and we're expanding to whole Europe to get this circular economy on European scale. So here I just take advantage of this opportunity. These are the materials: silicon, silver, copper, glass, high purity extracted from old solar panels from our factory. I guess yeah.
And how I mean, you're at this stage already where you are very much in contact with your partners and also off-takers for those recycled materials. So what it takes for you to convince partners to actually engage with you and enter into long-term agreements, and how easy or difficult it is to actually navigate those markets for a startup like ROSI?
So I do my best to share my 2 cents. So circular economy used to be called recycling. In ROSI, actually, we call it manufacturing. We manufacture high purity raw materials from end of life, so old solar panels. So when we have this mindset, is actually what we are doing is to integrate our innovations of disruptive technologies in a smooth way to the development of industry. So in Europe, we have all this industrial legacy on the manufacturing. So for me, the key is industrial integration all along the value chain. So we start from the upstream. So upstream solar module providers, so old solar module providers, these are power plant owners, these are EPC companies, PV manufacturers, eco-organizations. So our task is to really transmit the information. Today, high purity recycling of all the raw materials from all the used panels is possible. We align their mindset. Downstream, the users of all these high purity raw materials. We know in recycling there are 2 biggest challenges. First is in the purity of recycled materials. The purer you get, the higher value you can sell to the market. The second is recycled materials is never exactly the same as virgin material. Even the shape can have an impact on the reuse. So all our off-takers, they have to slightly adapt their process to reuse our materials. So we have a very strong engineering R&D team, work closely with our off-takers to have a mutual understanding to reintegrate these materials back to their industry. Then the middle part is most challenging. So realize our technology in an ecosystem, in an environment, so industrial production. So in the industrial operational side, it's not only the technology, it's the equipment that realize the technology, realize this new technology. So equipment suppliers should be open enough to integrate new functions. Then a big part comes from the facility utility providers. If their quality and also the cost, reliability can match what we expect as the output of the site. So we work very, very closely with all our partners. So overall, the value chain, there are 2 driving forces that will guarantee that this industrial integration will work. First of all, it's us. We are in the center of this recycling business, this circular economy. The second very, very big actor is the legislation, local authority. So for us, the relation between us and the local authority should be friends. Have we ever asked ourselves why policymakers pour tons of documents on us? Because they don't have information. They don't have the first feedback information from the field. Then they have to imagine and start to pour tons of documents. So our very little experience is we are very much heard by the policymakers, either in France, in our region, from French government or from the European Commission. They ask for experience from the field. An example, Europe has struggled to integrate locally produced raw materials back to manufacturing. But the policymakers, they have no idea how much, which quality should be written in the policy. So very often you see we will integrate locally produced materials with the best available technology. Very vague. So what is very, very good for us is when we share our information, for example, the silicon, we can reach probably 30% recycled silicon into the new manufacturing. We show the technical results. It's very fast to be adopted. So what I would recommend is all the industries, from our side, policymakers, we should be really, really friend to drive all these ventures, so adventure. Today we're at life and death point, European industry, have to drive forward together, and the direct benefit for industry is, I'm sure, we'll have much simplified policies.
Thank you. That was the idealistic. I have to think it over. Meanwhile, I will turn the mic to our coffee magician, Marcin. I think most of the audience here know EcoBean because you have a very particular stand at TBB for years now. But still, maybe there are some of them that do not know the company. So if you could introduce EcoBean in a couple of words, and then we'll move to the question.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So we are a very specific recycle player. So we are recycling coffee waste. So everyone, every day, probably generates some waste after drinking your morning coffee. We are specialized and focus on industrial waste. So focus on cooperation with instant coffee producers, cold brew producers, where the huge amounts of coffee waste are generated at place mainly. So we develop the technology and deliver the tool for such a players which recycle such material, such biomass into 4 ingredients, which is coffee oil, antioxidants, sugars, and lignin. All of these ingredients can be used in the chemical, food, and cosmetic industry. So remember that number. We are able to, from 1 ton of spent coffee grounds, we are able to get 9,000 euro revenue in with very healthy margins, up to 30% from each product.
Just to get put things in perspective again, but how big is the opportunity? I mean, my coffee is small, so to get to the ton that you're referring to, takes a while. Huh?
Yeah. So on the production side, this facilities generates every year more than 4 million tons of spent coffee grounds. Typical facility generates 30 to 40,000 tons of such a waste. So multiply by 9,000 euro. It's a lot.
So give us a little bit more info on how are your conversations or negotiations with those players evolving, and how incentivized they are to actually step into collaboration with EcoBean and work, and on what you need from market players, what type of involvement is required, and how you navigate those challenging waters of being a circular startup.
I think there are always 2 main drivers which are attractive for our customers. First one is the new revenue stream, and second, the main factor is safety. So from the let's say the upstream part, there are many players which from day one want to sell us the spent coffee grounds. It's everything around 200 euro per ton. So that's the initial quotation. We can read out of the problem, sell the waste, and that's it. But on the other side, on the downstream part, there are the players which are looking for new ingredients, for new natural ingredients. But of course, they will be attractive for them where there will be the scale. So our strategy is to put both sides into the table and start talk with them and show them there is the huge opportunity in between them. So we want to be such a missing puzzle piece to close the loop. So if we show them apart from 200 euro per ton, we can achieve together 9,000 euro and share. So that's something's changing. There is a trigger, and thanks to that we have their attention, and those off-takers also see the scale, because if you have such a player on the other side, which have a couple of facilities around the world, like Nestle 26, JD 28, so that's the real numbers, and for such players like BASF, L'Oréal, Givaudan, that's the huge cake and new source for the ingredients.
Okay. Let us now turn to the word disruption in our title, and maybe I'll come back to Ulf, asking. I mean, you are within the industry for quite some time, and you have seen your share of innovations and technologies. Is there anything that surprised you or kind of made you think, okay, this could be a disruption around the corner. This could be something that will, change the situation. That will be a game changer in the circularity market in recent quarters, months, or years, whatever you prefer.
Well, I guess I am the boring old grey-haired man in the community here too. Because I mean,
you said so. Up to you.
Yeah, I mean, we have for all years actually been crushing and sorting and then using chemicals or heat to separate the last part, and we are doing that much better every day. But I don't see that there are huge changes. I mean, there are certain waste streams, like maybe direct recycling of the black mass or whatever, and the coffee beans and so on. But if you look at the big picture, I don't see any new technology revolutionizing the recycling part that I'm focusing on. I think that's simple, that we need to look more into the products we are putting on the market. I mean, recycling is a mirror of the society, and the products we put on the market is also the material we get out of it when we crush and sort or do a chemical recycling or whatever.
But then, would you then say that we cannot rely on technologies, but rather on design for circularity to foster circularity going forward?
For sure. I mean, like you said, that I mean, no matter how good we are, we can never recycle to the same level, 100%. You always have some sort of downcycling on when you're crushing, sorting. And we also have a system. I mean, when we look at the products today, we can take the automotive industry, a new car. You want to have it lighter because you want to reduce the CO2 footprint. You want to have it stronger because you want it to be safe. And to do that, then you're alloying the steel quite a lot. And when we get the material to recycle it, the customer says, oh, we don't want that alloyed stuff. We want clean stuff instead, because we are producing another quality. So I mean, we get what we put into the system. And therefore, if we don't start looking on what type of products we are putting on the market or import for that sake, which is a huge gray part, I mean, what type of products are we taking in? We have a huge amount of fires on our facilities. We take care of electric waste. And I think our insurance costs have increased roughly 10 million euros the past 5 years, only in our company. And we have colleagues that even can't insure today because of the fires. And then we have a battery in all appliances, the toothbrush, and you bring it to the recycling yards, but the battery is still there, and when it's crushed, it starts a fire. So for sure, I mean, if we don't start designing using monostream material, then we will never be able to create that circular society that we want to have. So I'm coming back to what I said before, that I really look forward to how they will face this Circular Economy Act, because if you can't take that holistic perspective and say, okay, what really makes the matter, then I think actually we will have problems going forward. We can't regulate us out of this. We need to create the market. Sorry.
Okay, I take his face value. I'll try to look for a perspective on this from Andreas. To what extent, in your push towards the group becoming more circular, you're finding technologies that fit different elements of your strategy, and then how you rank and prioritize which ones are the ones that you should focus on. So what are the type of triggers that attract you to circular technologies and circular solutions?
First of all, you're totally right, and I will say a couple of words afterwards. So how to turn the linear to circular, right? So what attracts us, obviously, what we're doing with our re-oil process, it fits the refinery, right? You have an oil, you can distill it apart, right? You can use it. That's straightforward. What we completely underestimated was, Bengt, you also said it already, access to waste, sorting of wastes and upgrading wastes. to be able to start the circular economy, right? Starting with who owns the waste. In every country we live, it's a little bit different, yeah? And to give you a good example, I had a very ambitious idea for the Vienna City Marathon to collect all the cups, right, with this OMV and just recycle them. Until I was told you cannot do that because you're not the owner of the waste. So I had to find out who is owning this waste and how has it to be handled that we actually can do what we intended to do, right? Just as a simple example. So when you start with waste, and we know our waste bins at home, the next step is then sorting the waste. Yeah? And here it starts. I think there's big progress made, and you said it, yeah, but there's a long way to go. So all the new companies out there, right, also in your portfolio of InnoEnergy, this is also why we are in InnoEnergy, they will and need to contribute to accelerate this. Yeah? We as established industry, so to say, we can help them to industrialize it. I think they are really good. But I think this fast development of great new ideas to get really the yield up in the circular economy, we need the help of small companies, which are more agile and probably have better ideas, etc., etc. Yeah. So this is a little bit where we're in. Now, of course, we scale this because we want to industrialize, and what we are obviously our all actions are triggered by is industrialization, scale, etc., and at the end to get into the sweet point of the economics. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on one more element, which again is pretty important when I think about the whole landscape of circularity, and that is carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide utilization in particular. So, what are your thoughts around this? Are we already at the stage where this is a feedstock and a material that people treat this way, or it is still a nuisance that we are getting rid of, or trying to dismiss?
I mean, we actively look into this. I think CO2 is a very good feedstock. Now you can ask yourself, how do you want to get access to CO2? This is a big one, right? For example, CO2 is not CO2. I guess it's quite well known, right? If you burn a plant, for example, it's biogenic CO2, which is considered as green CO2. The stuff which comes out of the hard-to-abate industry, of the chimney, where it has a good concentration, is gray CO2. You cannot basically convert this directly to, for example, a sustainable fuel. It's not RFNBO qualified. When you use direct air capture, basically filtering CO2 out of the air, it's quite energy intense. It's again okay-ish CO2. But to answer your question, CO2 is a very good feedstock, right? There are technologies there to convert it. I think there are also some in your portfolio. What we are actively looking into is basically CO2, bringing it to an intermediate called methanol, and then pushing it downstream until we have either fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, that we can fly back from Portugal to wherever we come home. I'm pretty sure all of you ticked the SAF check mark. Or actually make chemicals out of that, right? And by this, you close then the bigger circular economy, right? And not only plastic to plastic or etc.
Bengt, moving to you, you mentioned CO2 as an important factor for profitability and wealth creation in the context of construction materials. Are there, in your practice, in your work as a startup partner within Holcim, are you seeing technologies that could actually bring disruption to the market through circular ideas and application of those ideas? And what are the examples of such technologies?
Yeah, I think maybe starting with a super interesting point there on kind of the emissions, right? I mean, as you say, that there are a lot of gray emissions from a cement plant. I think what I just would like to add there is, because I mean, we are firing our cement plants quite often to a very high level, up to 99% or 100% with biomass, with alternative fuels or biomass even. So then you can at least say that this component is then a green CO2 when we are capturing that, which comes with a different price or value tag, right? Just this as an addition there. I think, and And this is kind of what Holcim is pushing now very heavily in Europe. We have 7 carbon capture projects on the way for 7 cement plants in Europe, which will mean we will capture after 2030 something like 5 million tons of CO2. Where do you go with that material, or with that material? I mean, kind of storing it somewhere on the ground in the North Sea is maybe not always the best way. It's maybe also not always the most cost-efficient way. Now there are ways to convert it then into construction materials. For example, with olivine rock, which stores a lot of CO2, and we can make like a cement replacement out of that. There are startup technologies out there where we are collaborating. Not completely into the circular area, but there is another case where we are currently working with a startup which uses construction demolition materials, which also works as like a sponge to absorb CO2. It's a Swiss startup called Neustark. So we can, to the point that you're always downcycling, we potentially can even upcycle a little bit, in the sense that we are kind of reusing demolished concrete as a sponge for CO2 and use it then again for fresh concrete. So this is kind of something which it's not disruptive in terms of it's absorbing millions of tons, but it's disruptive that really we try to play all the levers to decarbonize and drive the circularity.
And what about the promise of design for circularity in construction? I mean, what is your view on that?
Yeah, I love it, and I hope that there are many startups out there, and we are kind of working with architects and so who are kind of pushing this topic more, and hopefully that this will come more. But if we are building for design for construction today, the waste stream will only happen in 30, 50, 70 years, right? I mean, this is the lifespan of buildings. And in these 30, 50 years, which I hopefully still live, we are still having construction demolition waste, which comes from the traditional way, and we have to find ways of how to use that in the most.
And there's also a question of a business model that you would have to monetize what future effects you will get over such long period. I mean, that's also a challenging question to understand how to build a model around that.
Yeah, I mean, there have been already discussions if we should actually rent or lease floors and walls, right? Because we take them back after 30 years, but this is, I think, still a little bit future music.
Marcin, you are now at the stage where you need to roll out your first of a kind. How it feels nowadays in Europe to be at this stage, and what are the factors that that investors and partners that you're working with on that are taking into account in the decisions around being involved in this? I'm talking investors, technology providers, EPCs, public finance providers, the whole ecosystem, how they play into this.
I think the heavy capex projects, startup projects is not a piece of cake right now, but there is always question how big the first of a kind facility should be, which is the scale is enough to go to the industry directly, or it's the smallest size as possible. So we have we got a couple great discussion, I think since 2 years with the market players, and we pivot a lot on this. So right now we're going to 2 streams in our development. So in parallel, we develop the first of a kind facility, which we're calling demo facility, which is the main purpose and goal for the future will be the further development of the technology. But in parallel, we are already ready to go with the industrial designing in industrial scale. So we are trying to get both together. We're doing this thanks to our strategy, because if we want to grow fast and scale fast, we need partnerships. We need those partners, big players. So yeah, we signed a partnership with GEA, This is the big engineer and equipment company dedicated mainly to the food and cosmetic industry. And thanks to them, we have the capacity to, let's say, start all these business cases, business talks with those big players around the world. So that's our current approach.
And I understand that their involvement also, de-risks the project in the eyes of your counterparts, because them being involved allows your coffee partners to say, okay, we believe that this will work.
We try to develop those tables I mentioned before, like in JV models. So we're bringing in together and, let's say, cutting the cake between the partners. And thanks to that, there is a possible and there is a place for all of the kind of the support in case of money. So also for venture capitals, for CVCs, and also for strategic investors. So we just trying to find out the money from every side.
Mm. You're behind, or you're beyond your first of a kind already. So what was this experience like, and also what type of learnings you have for the European expansion of ROSI? What is the plan, and how you're leveraging the lessons learned, rolling out factories across Europe now?
So thank you. So ROSI is a technology company. The core personnel all come from the world of technology and industry. So very beginning, we really believed everything comes from technology. We still believe that with a little bit more realistic view on the ecosystem around it. So the first plant, which is already an operational factory in France, for us, it's an industrial demonstrator, which shows the quality of the process and the quality of the recycled materials in order to secure the off-takers and also the supply chain. This is still a relatively easier part, I would say, because we're confident in where we come from. Lesson learned from the expansion is that it's all on this word about appetite, about risk. So when we do expansion, we need fresh capital injection. So capital injection on the current market situation, it's all linked to risk. And very often in Europe, CVCs or VCs, the risk is very much concentrated on technology readiness, industrial readiness. So very often the preference goes to a proven technology, proven, a large scale. So it is, I would say, not very easy to convince the pure financial investors into a technology which has already demonstrated the first scale industrialization and still has to demonstrate a full big line integration and a stability in the operation. This is why we do a very much a blend financing. So with, for example, European Investment Bank, also the grant, also a lot come from the industrial partners that understand deeply where the risk really is and how to de-risk by which industry. So ROSI is a technology company. When I say technology company, we're very good in process and the machines. We cannot reinvent the wheel for process integration, supervision, MES. So we work with big European companies for that piece. So we're still on the way to gather more and more experience. And up to now, I think the whole ROSI team, we cannot really complain. We have a lot of support from the industrial partners, also from the European Commission, from the different countries, and also from our investors. Really, I'm very grateful to their patience.
It's good to hear that there is nothing to complain. It's quite rare these days. So again, I'm pleasantly surprised. But turning this back to you, and that will be the question to all of you, by the way, just to finish off our discussion, because before I leave the floor for questions from the audience. But if there could be one thing that you would ask the fairy tale to change over the next 12 years, be it in 12 months, be it in policy or in the market circumstances, what would it be? I mean, what is the thing that you would ask for in terms of change in your in your market environment or in the policy that affects you?
I would like to say, in order to accelerate this new industry, so manufacturing of high-quality raw materials from waste, we need shared commitment and shared risk.
How would you translate it?
For all the stakeholders involved in the business, upstream stakeholders, downstream users, technology provider, and the European industry, especially the industry who are already operational on big scale. The share of experience, share of information, share of commitment, share of investment, share of risks. We have to share.
Any fairy tale wish or?
No, well, I agree. I agree with the ability to see the entire value chain, and for sure, I mean, in Europe we are competing with subsidized markets, both in Asia and in the West. So I think what we really need to do is to look more on market creation and maybe then subsidize some of that instead of creating more rules that only actually brings burden to small companies, but also to big companies.
Marcin?
For us, I think it's a good time because the coffee industry, let's say that the prices are booming right now, the margins are shrinking, the Trump's tariffs are not helping, so the coffee industry looking for new revenue streams. So that's the moment for us, and also a lot of companies, chemical, food, cosmetic industry declare their goals, 2030 goals, to change, to switch to the natural ingredients. So that's the moment.
So we want to build an economy, right? And for an economy, it has to have a profitability aspect. My wish would be that we really can standardize and align along the value network that good that we really have efficiency and scale in circular economy, which enables us to do this without subsidies. Yeah, because economies without subsidies have a future.
So that's my magic wand. So I wish for transparency of availability and composition of construction demolition materials. Because if we have this transparency, then there is the ecosystem, there is the value chain which can redirect it to repurpose it in the best, most value-adding way.
And going a little bit deeper on that, is AI and machine learning and whatnot, digital solutions, the magic wand in your hand, or do you need to rely on something else here? I mean, because I understand that those technologies applied to different type of material streams can facilitate sorting in, big time, or am I mistaken here?
No, sure. These are enablers. I mean, there are technologies where you can say, hey, if now in this suburb, this street in Amsterdam, you're demolishing a house, probably this and this is the composition of rubble that you will get. Mm-hmm. So this can help. I think the other element is more collaboration, and collaboration can work through digital platforms, again, bringing different stakeholders on board, which then also make this material. So it's a combination, but yeah, AI, digital can help.
Okay, we still have a couple of minutes, so if anybody would like to ask a question, we will be delighted to try to answer. And don't be shy. I know it's late, but let's try to engage. I'll stand up so that you know that I'm coming to you, and happy to share the mic. Oh yes, there we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe just a question to, I guess, Ecobee and ROSI. Are you able to actually source long-term offtake contracts before you build the plant, or do you have to invest speculatively and then hope for the offtake market to be there?
I don't hear you well.
You're not hearing? Do I need to be louder? Okay, now just saying, are you able to procure long-term offtake contracts before building and investing into the plants, or do you need to build on a speculative basis and then hope for a market to be there?
We are able to secure long-term off-taking contracts, but we don't do it. because it depends on the materials. So several materials are kind of a commodity material like silver, copper. You really sell to the market price. I don't know if you realize silver price has shooted 50% last week, 50%. So if you see €1,500 per kilo within a week. So we more or less follow the market trend and still gauge it a bit that it should not shoot, should not drop very fast. Other materials like silicon, of course, it should be a long-term contract. So we secure already with the off-taker at the same time building the facility. And in order to secure long-term, we even integrate this off-taker more in our venture.
Marcin?
In our case, the beauty of our project, the half of our partners or customers are generating the waste and also can use the product, the ingredients in their own loop. So that's much easier in that case.
Okay, see, it was easy. It was easy to ask the question. Fire away. Anybody else? Don't be shy. See, then you come back home and you complain that you know such a boring panel, you know, nothing happened. I mean, that's the moment that you can seize it and you know, carpe diem, carpe. Remember the movie, huh? No? Last call. Well, if not, then the last thing that we need to do is give them a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.